Hey Who fans, and welcome to the Big Blue Box podcast. My name's Gary.
My name's Adam.
And this is episode 174.
Have you ever thought what it's like to be wanderers in the fourth dimension?
Nobody in the universe can do what we're doing.
I've reversed the polarity of the neutron flow, so the TARDIS should be free of the force field now.
There's no point in being grown up if you can't be childish sometimes.
The trouble with time travel is one never seems to find the time.
Change, my dear, and it seems not a moment too soon.
Unlimited rice pudding, etc., etc.
I am the Doctor!
Great men are forged in fire. It is the privilege of lesser men to light the flame.
I'm the Doctor. This is Rose Tyler. She's my +1. Is that all right?
That would be me.
Hello, surprise,
Boom, etc.
I'm the Doctor. Do everything I tell you. Don't ask stupid questions. And don't wander off.
How can you kid this? I don't like the colour.
Howdy do, Who fans. Hope you all having had a cracking week and that you've all managed to do something Doctor Who related.
Doctor Who.
We hope you've got your Doctor Who on, figuratively and physically. Yes.
Brilliant.
Welcome to 174. We've had a good week. Done some stuff, haven't we?
We have, yeah.
Ain't we?
So it's always good when we've done some stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
So to any new listeners to the show, welcome aboard, of course. But what normally happens is Adam and I, before we get stuck into what's been happening in the world of Doctor Who, where we speak about latest news and merchandise and so on, before we get on to our review of that particular week's episode, we normally have a bit of a catch-up, a.k.a. a chat, a.k.a. waffle, a.k.a. blithering on, which can last anywhere from 2 minutes to 25 minutes.
To 2 hours.
Yeah. Which is always fun. So
this week, yeah, go on, sorry.
Normally, this week, however, the stuff that we've done has been a joint effort.
Yeah, I was going to say this week, you know what I've been doing because you were there and I was there.
Indeed. Yes. So on Sunday, I was going to say Saturday, then on Sunday, just gone, you and I were at the BFI again, down at Southbank.
Yep. In
good old London town, where we saw a showing of The Day of the Doctor, which was their celebration of John Hurt, wasn't it? They were showing a series of John Hurt films and TV shows, I think over the course of 2 or 3 weeks, if I remember correctly, or a week, something like that.
Yeah.
And the Day of the Doctor, they couldn't, I remember when the, I forget the guy's name who presents it and interviews the people, but he did say...
Justin something.
Yeah, but he did say that they couldn't do all that without including his Doctor Who performance, which is rightly so. And we had a blast, didn't we?
It was a great day. It was really good because I said to you afterwards, and I was so glad that we both decided to go because we were tempted by the Science of the Time Lords in Leicester, which was the same day, and both of us were a bit like, oh, which should we do? We've already bought our ticket. Shall we dump it into? But I'm really, really pleased that we stuck with it because, it was a great day actually. Got to be a little bit careful what I say because we haven't reviewed it yet. So I don't want to give too much away about the episode itself. I will say this though, it was great to see it on the big screen. That it certainly benefited from it, and it looked good on the big screen as well.
It did, yes.
Yeah, but we had a great day, and obviously the Moff was interviewed afterwards, wasn't he? With who's the other chap? Marcus, producer
guy. What's his name?
Marcus. Actually, he didn't get to say a lot because the Moff did a lot of the talking, didn't he?
Marcus Wilson.
That's it.
Yep.
And in the Q&A, most of the questions were for the Moff. But I think you'll agree with me, mate. He was on absolute top form on Sunday.
He was
Mr. Stephen Moffat. He was funny. In fact, he was really funny.
Yeah.
He was very relaxed. One thing that struck me was it kind of looks like he's had all this pressure taken off. In fact, at one point, I think he did make a quip about not having to watch what he says anymore or something.
That's right.
When he made a mildly rude joke, and he said, "Oh, I don't have to worry about saying things like that anymore." So he seemed very relaxed and was really funny, I thought, and very interested.
Really,
his answers to the questions. Although me and you do think he was not saying bending the truth. Not exactly bending the laws of time, but certainly stretching them a little. I think sometimes his answers, we weren't sure about a couple of them, were we? In terms of he was saying about why he didn't include the classic Doctors in the actual 50 episodes, and he was saying none of them were annoyed about it. That was all nonsense. And we've actually heard from the Doctors themselves at different panels that's not actually true.
Yes.
I think there is one particular Doctor who's certainly not happy about it. But anyway.
Me? The guy? Who could that be?
Happy?
Yes.
Yeah. But he was fascinating. It was really, really good Q&A, wasn't it?
Really good.
I loved it. Yeah, I loved it as much as the actual watching it on the big screen, actually, as the episode.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you got to ask a question?
I did, yeah. So the format of the day was quite cool. We had just a very small intro from that guy. I can't remember his name. It might be Justin something.
Yeah.
And then we went straight into it. And then afterwards, the Moff and Marcus went on stage. And anyone that's been to the BFI, to these things, will know that there's a bit of a discussion where, let's call him Justin for the sake of it, just for the hell of it. So where Justin will ask his own questions. And then they'll open it up to everyone there. And one of the things that was a bit of a theme around his questions, and also some of the questions that the audience asked, and I was one of them, was around Chris Eccleston and the Ninth Doctor's potential involvement into the Day of the Doctor, because it's meant to be, well, going to land myself in some trouble here, I'm not sure, because I can't remember exactly how it was marketed before, but it was meant to be a celebration of 50 years of Doctor Who. If you remember, I think that's how the BBC went along when it was first announced.
Yeah.
Because it was meant to be this big special and a celebration of 50 years and so on. And then the Moff, in his own way, sort of changed it, didn't he? Because I remember either reading in Doctor Who magazine a couple of years ago or hearing him at another panel somewhere that he didn't want it to be a kind of a look back. He wanted it to be a sort of a stepping stone to the future of Doctor Who, while kind of subtly waving behind, at the past.
Yeah.
And Justin did say to him, what went on with Chris? And this is something that I hadn't have heard before, because I was under the impression, and I think you were as well, mate, that the Moff and Chris only ever met once. And it was a case of the Moff wanted to meet him, pitched the idea, Chris said thanks but no thanks, and that was it. But in actual fact, they had 2 meetings, didn't they?
Yes.
Which I was unaware of. So the first time that they met, the Moff went through the story, and he was quite funny, wasn't he? Because he said that he got quite animated and really got into it.
Yeah.
And he was there with Chris for about an hour and a half, maybe, really, really selling it to him. And that's what in previous interviews, it was sort of penned that Chris at the end said, it sounds good, but not for me. But in actuality, Chris had actually thought, this is all right. And, and the Moff said that he edged a bit closer to maybe saying yes. And then they had a second meeting, and the Moff, got more animated and got, really into it. And he said that Chris moved another step towards yes as well. And he thought maybe he was going to do it, but then for reasons unknown, and fair play to the Moff, he won't actually say what Chris said to him, his actual reasons for saying no. But he said that Eccleston was like really polite and humble, and, for whatever reasons are his own, but he just said, I can't do it.
Yeah.
So that was really interesting, because it was always sort of put out there before that it was just a sort of open and shut case. It was like, do you want to do it? Not really for me, bye, on your way. But it sounds like there was a lot more a lot more to it, a lot more to and fro. And I don't know, maybe the Moff should have got someone else involved, got the sales pitch a bit harder.
I don't know. It sounded, from what he was saying, it sounded like he really tried hard, and it sounded like he probably got Eccleston closer to doing it than Eccleston thought he would. But 2 things that I really liked about what he told us that day was that the first of all, that when he contacted Chris wanted to meet him face to face. He didn't want to tell him over a email or text. He said, look, I want to meet with you, discuss it, and tell you why I don't want to do it.
Yes.
And the Moff was like, okay, well, that's fine. Let's meet. But before you tell me why you don't want to do it, let me just tell you what I've got planned and then tell me. So that was just like the first meeting, wasn't it? So I like the fact that Chris wanted to do that, because he could have quite easily just said to his agent, no, I'm not, just tell him. The fact he wanted to meet the Moff and to explain himself. So then it does sound like, like the Moff convinced him to come back for a second meeting, which I don't think he'd sort of planned on. And the Moff said he'd already written quite a lot of the script, hadn't he? Yeah. Because that was the other thing we said. I said, God, I'd love to see that original script surface on that. Because how much did he say he'd written? Like a third of it or something?
Well, more than that. He'd written over half of the script already at that point.
Yeah, he was sort of beavering away, getting it all done to convince Chris. And then, it was on that second meeting that Chris said, really, no, I've thought about it, and no, not going to happen. But yeah, I like you. I just love the fact that, like you said, it wasn't a shut and closed case, that he did actually get him that little bit closer.
Yes.
And all credit to the Moff for doing that, really, and for Chris for taking enough interest in it and stuff.
Yeah. And I thought I'd prod the beast a little bit more. So when they open it up for everybody to ask questions, my hand went straight up, and I asked Stephen if Chris had said yes, what would the story have been like in terms of, because of Chris's, he didn't accept the role in that. The Moff said that there was a bit of a panic, wasn't there? Because he said, well, we have to do something. We're going to have to, we can't just have the two. We need this other bit of the story. We can't just have 10 and 11. He said, so there's a bit of a panic about what we were going to do. And that's when the idea of this, other doctor being created, the War Doctor and so on, which, went on to lead to John Hurt. So I said to him, if Chris had said yes, would we have still gone down the road of, being similar to John Hurt's storyline and so on? And I think that's when he said that, he'd written so much of it already that he probably would have done, So Chris Eccleston's character still would have been based around, his timeline still would have started around the Time War, and it was still would have been, the origins, and around there, and how, he would have been the one, that potentially pushed the button to kill everybody on Gallifrey.
And it's interesting because he said it was going to be the Doctor before he met Rose as well, didn't he?
That's
he
right.
said it'd be the Ninth Doctor just before he met Rose, which is interesting, but it does make me think, because the first thing I thought of when he said it was, when we see Chris in the episode Rose, he checks his ears in the mirror, so you get the impression he's not long regenerated.
Yes.
So I was thinking when he said that, how would that have worked then if it's the Ninth Doctor before it? So do you know what I mean? That may have conflicted. I'm sure the Moff would have found the way around it like he always does. But yeah, I thought that was quite interesting.
That's what I was going to say. There probably would have been some deep explanation buried in the Moff's brain somewhere, because there were a couple of other questions where people did ask him a question that was sort of related to continuity and so on. And he sort of laughs it off, really, and he sort of jokes around, and he's like, "Look, this is Doctor Who. It's if you disagree with the quirkiness of time travel, then this probably isn't the show for you." Sort of thing, right. He said, if you're going to treat everything as black and white and everything's linear, then it's not going to happen. So he has these kind of little get out clauses, if you like, where sometimes he'll say, actually, no, the story is intended to be based on this character or this timeline, and it actually does fit if you think about it. He sort of outsmarts you a little bit because he's a very clever guy.
He is clever.
Yeah. Or he just says, just go with it.
He's very quick-witted, actually. When I say he's clever, he's very quick, isn't he, with the responses? Like you said, he's very clever in terms of his responses to your questions. Very quick-witted man.
Yes.
I thought.
Yeah.
I'll tell you the two questions that got asked that I've always wanted to ask him as well was, why didn't he consider putting Paul McGann in it for a multi-Doctor story?
Yep.
Now, again, I don't know that I'm quite happy with his answer, but what he said was, we'd already got one dashing, two dashing doctors in it with Matt and David. And he was saying, so really, I wanted a contrast. I didn't really want another dashing, good-looking doctor in it.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So I thought, I wanted. He said, whereas Chris would have worked because he's got like Norv, and he could have been doing the sort of war doctor when he's having a go at him. He said that would have worked with Chris, but he didn't feel it would work with McGann's doctor, did he?
Yeah.
So I kind of see where he's coming from with that, but I still don't quite go along with it. I still think it would have been great to have McGann in it, because I also feel like, and he almost said it, didn't he, that McGann was a bit of the Night of the Doctor thing was a bit of an afterthought with McGann.
Yeah.
It was a kind of like, very last minute. So I was thinking, so that suggests to me that he never really considered having McGann part of it, or at least not till very late on.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing I loved was someone asked him if he would ever consider doing a book like Russell, The Writer's Tale.
Oh, yeah.
Which is something we've said about before, saying, God, it'd be really interesting to sort of, once he stepped away from it for a while, to hear all the things he wished he could change or would have done different or didn't get included and all that. But he shot it straight down, didn't he? He said, no, I wouldn't do that. He said, Russell's done it. Why would I do one? Or something like that. Why would I do a copy of his book? And I was like, oh, that's a bit of a shame.
Yeah. He was very complimentary about Russell's book, though. He did say it's one of the best books, and he did say if anyone hasn't read it, then go out and get it. And he is right. It's a fascinating book. It's one of the best Doctor Who books. Behind the scenes kind of thing. So yeah, that was an interesting couple of questions, actually. And like you said, he was very quick. He didn't sort of sit there and stare into space and think about his answers. They were just there. So, you could tell that he lives Doctor Who. And a couple more interesting things that I want to pick up on is he did say that Chris Chibnall had asked him to write more Doctor Who for Series 11. Which I was not sort of surprised about, but what I was quite surprised was that the Moff just immediately said no. So he didn't give that any thought. He just said no. It's your thing now.
Yeah.
I don't want to be in the corner, just sort of put my hand up saying
behind your back. Did he say, "Oh, I wouldn't do that"?
Yeah. So, and that kind of matches what I think Russell T Davies said, because I know that the Moff has asked Russell to come back and write stories for Doctor Who, and he's always said no. Maybe for that very reason, that because he was showrunner before, he just doesn't want to come in and be like, oh, you should be doing this, or have you thought about that? And so that's interesting that Chibnall has already asked him to come back and write Who. And the other thing is that he's not really left it. When they filmed the Christmas special, so he's left with Capaldi and so on, and they've sort of said their goodbyes. He said that at the moment he's writing the novelisation for the Day of the Doctor.
Yeah.
So he's kind of 2/3 of the way through that, and he's also attending a Doctor Who event, for the Day of the Doctor. So it's really true. Remember we said a few times about the actors that play the Doctor, where it never really leaves you, does it? As an actor, right. It sort of follows you around, and you're always known as the Doctor. And I guess it's kind of true for the showrunner and other people who work on the show as well, because, Russell T Davies, one of his biggest accomplishments will be bringing Doctor Who back, and the same with the Moff, he'll always be known as the showrunner on Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And you and I have said a couple of times that he must be loving his break from Doctor Who at the moment, but it appears that he's still doing stuff for the show. So it's amazing.
He said that the writing the Day of the Doctor novels, he said he's realised it's one of the most complicated stories to write that he ever wrote. He just said it's so the way it goes back and forth, and he's almost said he's struggling with it really, which is bizarre because he wrote it. But yeah, I can, having watched it again, I could see why that would be hard to novelise that story.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just to say about Stephen Moffat though, no matter what your thoughts on him as a producer or his era of Doctor Who, one thing I will say about Stephen, I've seen him in a few interviews now, he is always really interesting and really funny and sometimes very to the point. I was going to say very blunt, but that makes him sound like he's rude. I wouldn't say he's rude, but he's definitely, he says what he wants to say, and I just think he's really good sort of value for money when you get him in an interview. He's just really entertaining.
Absolutely, yeah. So we've seen him on a couple of panels in the past, and he's never any different, regardless of what panel you see him on. He's always, because there are a couple of people who asked him a question on Sunday, and his first reply was no. You know, like you said, he's very to the point. He won't mince his words. You know, when somebody asks him something, he's like, no. I think it was about the five-ish doctors, or something like that. You know, the question around you not having the classic doctors in the 50th.
Yeah,
and you know, and he was like, no. You know, he wouldn't have worked. I think his reasoning was the actors are so much older. You know, they don't look like they're doctors anymore. And
he said he could get away with it once with Tom being a sort of ambiguous. Who is that character? He said, but I couldn't do that for all the doctors. I couldn't have like the fifth Doctor turning up in a taxi, you know, saying, "Where do you want to go?" He said, I just couldn't do it. He said, I could get away with it with one classic Doctor, but I couldn't do it for the rest. I kind of get that, but we both feel that there are ways around it.
Yeah, we'll say no more because we need to review that.
I've got to rein it in. Until we review it, because we had a good old chat about it down the pub afterwards, didn't we? Just because we've never really talked about Day of the Doctor that much either, considering it's such a big important episode. We've never really spoke about it. We haven't reviewed it. I don't know when we'll do it. It'll probably be some sort of special occasion because it is a biggie.
It is a biggie. Yes.
So I won't say too much about that. I will just say also great of Stephen to come out and just sign. He was just so chilled, wasn't he? Come out with a big glass of red wine and was stood with a queue of people, happy to sign everything, photos, you know, which was really nice to see because, I mean, he could have just gone straight in the green room and said, thanks, guys. Like a lot of people have that when I've been to BFI before, and I can't blame them. They're not there to sign autographs, so they don't, no obligation. But again, it just shows my appreciation of Stephen Moffat is just quite high in terms of him as a person, you know, not necessarily some of his decisions as a producer, but, you know, that was just really nice to see. He didn't seem to be hassled or pushing people saying, well, I'll do a couple more, but come on, guys. He was just quite happy to stand there with his wine and sign and pose and all that.
Yeah,
it's really nice to see.
We got a couple of pictures, didn't we? And signed a couple of bits. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
So overall, it was a great day. It was regardless of how we feel about the Day of the Doctor, which we'll come on to in our review at some point whenever we do it. It was brilliant to watch it in the cinema because it was. It does have that. Even though Doctor Who had leaned towards the more cinematic feel in past years, that kicked off with Matt Smith's era, I would say. This one does feel very epic, you know, especially in the cinema. It does have that very cinematic feel. So it was great to watch it on the big screen.
It certainly was. Yeah, I haven't seen many Doctor. I think the only other one I've seen on the big screen was Deep Breath, I think, because they did a couple, didn't they, on cinema showings? I mean, obviously Day of Doctor because it's 50th. I didn't see it on the big screen at the actual time. I watched it on TV in a hotel room, but. Yeah, Deep Breath I saw the big screen, and I don't know, it doesn't make an episode better. Because I remember, you know, sort of liking Deep Breath when I saw it at the cinema, and then when I watched it again on the TV, it was nowhere near as good as I sort of remembered it. I was thinking, it was so epic on the big screen. Yeah. And maybe it's because you get the reaction from all the other fans around you as well, where, you know, you sort of feel part of everyone laughs at the same gags or gasps at the same moments and all that sort of stuff. So maybe that adds to it. You know,
it's great.
Yeah, well, it's really good. I'll tell you another thing as well. When we were sort of thinking of ditching the screening to go to Leicester, I thought I'll just see how much the ticket was because we'd already bought tickets. So I'll just see how much money I'd lose if we did that. And the ticket, to my amazement, when I went back and looked, was only £11. Which people might say, well, is that cheap? Well, yeah, I paid $17 to go and see Star Wars at my local cinema the other day. So £11 to go to the BFI and have that brilliant experience and also, I mean, you know, the plus side of actually meeting them off afterwards and the Q&A, that's actually really good value. Really I know they're not always that cheap. I think the what was the last one we did?
Sharda one was...
Sharda one more expensive, but you got the DVD included in the price ticket, so it's a bit more expensive. But yeah, I mean, that's. I just kept thinking that was a blimmin' good day for £11. I can't moan at that.
That was great. Yeah. Very good value.
Very good. Yeah.
I'm not sure what the next one is going to be, Doctor Who wise at the BFI, but we'll keep an eye on it. We'll let you guys know and try and come down because it's a really, really good. And we always go for drinks afterwards and chat lots of nonsense and Who and.
Yeah, that was good, wasn't it?
So, yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
And we went to FP before, picked up a couple of little nuggets, didn't we? I bagged
What did you
another. The Doctor Men, little vinyl figures.
Oh, yeah.
So I picked up the 4th Doctor one to go with Hartnell, which looks really good, and that was it. Yeah, that's all I picked up. I think you got a
I got
something. Pop Funko.
Yeah, that's it. I was going to say, we were quite restrained actually, weren't we? Because I must admit, going in there at the weekend kind of does my head in because it's always so much busier and I can't move around. I always like going there in the week when it's quieter and I can actually have a proper look at stuff. But there wasn't a great deal in there anyway. But I was. It was good not to spend loads of money anyway.
Well, that's always a bonus, isn't it?
Always a bonus, yeah. If you go near FP.
Yes. And I've not been doing anything else Doctor Who related, really. Have you done anything else, mate?
I listened to this morning while I was doing sorting out some stuff. I put on a big finish. I'd bought the latest release with the crowded TARDIS team. Kingdom of Lies is part of the monthly range. So it's 5th Doctor, Davison, Tegan, Adric. Is Nissa in it? I can't remember now. But I've got to tell you, I listened to the first 2 episodes. It's like a little 4-parter. Yeah, Nissa is in it. I've got to tell you, I'm struggling with it, which is really disappointing because I like this TARDIS team, and it's the next sort of, they often do like a little trilogy, and then then they go on to the 6th Doctor, then 7th, and then they'll come back, and so it's like the next sort of new little trilogy with the crowded TARDIS team, as I call them. And I normally quite like them, but this one's very light-hearted. And sort of a bit like, I'm trying to think, when they do light stories, like some of the Big Finish stories, they're a bit light.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And they're intentionally sort of light. And this is one of those. And I don't know, I'm not very good with them stories because I like it when they're good and they draw you in. And this one's just sort of very jokey and the storyline's very silly. And
Right.
So, I listened to the first episode that day, and I've got to admit, I can't really be bothered to listen to the rest. I will, though, because it costs $14 blimmin' 99. So do you know what I mean? I was like, no, I will like this story, but I don't know. Maybe I just wasn't in the mood for it. I just was a bit too comical for my personal taste. Some people might really like it. As I said, I suppose it's an easy listen if nothing else. But so that's the only other thing I've done. I just listened to that while I was sorting out a load of receipts this morning.
I think is that by Robert Kahn and somebody else potentially?
It is I've got the cover here actually. Yes, it is Robert Kahn and Tom Salinsky.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that might explain why it's a little bit comical.
Why do they often do that sort of?
Well, a couple of they can be a bit, like you say, a bit light-hearted, a little bit on the funnier side.
Yeah, it's just all about a sort of parallel sort of Prince Charles and Camilla, Diana. I don't know. It's all just sort of royal family sort of takeoff, and I don't know. It's just not doing a lot for me. But it may be maybe parts 3 and 4 it all. But anyway, we'll see. I'll let you know next week if I finish it and if it gets any better. As I say, some people might like it. It might just be personal taste. Some people might like those jokier stories. Yeah.
Who knows?
So that's it. That's the only other thing, mate. Yes, I haven't been doing anything else.
Cool. I haven't been doing anything either. So, should we land it and do some news?
Yeah.
One bit of news this week, and as usual for 2018 so far, we have to report someone's passing. Sad
news again.
This is very sad news, and we've only found out about it now. This Jeremy Wilkin passed away at the end of December at the age of 87, and the name will ring a bell for classic Who fans and potentially Blake Seven fans, maybe.
Yeah.
So Jeremy Wilkin, he was Professor Kelman in Revenge of the Cybermen, and went on to do a load of voice work for Jerry Anderson. So he was Virgil in Thunderbirds, also did some Captain Scarlet stuff and Joe 90. So it was really big sort of voice work back in the day, and also went on to do some Blake Seven stuff. Was he in a couple of episodes of it?
No, he's just in the first one. Yeah, he plays a sort of pivotal role in the first episode. Yeah.
Ah, I see. Yeah, so really big sort of face around that. So because Doctor Who and Blake Seven are often linked in some way.
I'm just laughing because I don't know why I'm so guarded about who he plays a traitor. I'm saying it as if I'm like giving out a big spoiler. Like, it's only 40 years old or whatever it is. It's a bit like somebody put on Twitter about the ending of Blake Seven. This is ages ago, and there's like a few people like, "Oh no, spoilers! Don't say that." And it's like, blimmin' heck, it's been out 40 years.
Blimmin'
Surely
heck.
it's ended by now. He played sort of a traitor in it, and
Right.
but I think of him. Although I'm a massive Blake Seven fan, I think of him. When I see his picture, I always think of Revenge of the Cybermen. That's what I associate him with, the character in that. So, again, playing a bit of a shady character, if I remember right. I haven't watched that for a while.
Yeah, so unfortunately, we lose another classic Who actor, Jeremy Wilkin.
Yes, I did think as soon as I saw this, he appeared at the Phantom event. I say recently, it might even been February last year, actually, but he was definitely at one of the Phantom events I went to, because I don't think he did move. Didn't he move to Canada for a while, for many years?
Long
I remember
time ago.
being a thing that he was there. So yeah, sad news.
Sad news indeed, and that's the only news we have, which is sad. So we do need to get our metal friend in. I'm sure he's got at least one bit for us.
Merch corner. Merch corner. Merch corner.
I don't know whether to be impressed or disgusted.
It's a bit rubbish, but it's pretty. It's very pretty.
Just one bit of merch from old Grumpy Guts.
Yeah, although he likes the cover on this one, doesn't he?
Well, of course he does. Not that he's vain or anything. There's a new DVD on the way from Kosh Media. I've seen these guys release quite a few things.
Yeah, they've been doing quite a bit lately. Yeah.
So they released these sort of independent documentary style DVDs around Doctor Who. So they are, I was going to say, it's a tricky one. They are sort of official, as in they do cover the actual content and story from Doctor Who, but they're not allowed to use like the proper Doctor Who logo or anything like that from the BBC. I think I'm saying that correctly. But this one is called, it's a new one. It's just called simply Monsters! ! Released on the 5th of March. So you can pre-order it now. And it's a unique compilation of a documentary, I Was a Doctor Who Monster, and then 5 smaller titles from the Mythmaker series from Real Time Pictures. Hosted by McCoy. Old 7. And the synopsis is, for the first time, Who fans can learn about the men and women that brought to life the monsters that sent them behind the sofa. I Was a Doctor Who Monster is hosted by McCoy, and Mythmakers is presented by Nicholas Briggs, who interviews the stars and production staff of Doctor Who to find out the story behind the world's famous sci-fi television series. In this particular special, you can meet a plethora of people who played monsters as diverse as Daleks, Cybermen, Yeti, Fish People, and Marshmen. That's a bit obvious, really, isn't it?
Imagine that on your CV. Marshmen, Fish People.
Well, I'm thinking of where it says diverse, and they mention Daleks and Cybermen. It reminds me of when Ricky Gervais presented the Golden Globes Awards a few years back, and he presented Sylvester Stallone to come up and present. He said, welcome to the stage, a really versatile actor who can do anything. Over the years, he's been a soldier and a boxer. Please welcome Sylvester Stallone. So anyway, yes, you can dive into the diverse and monsters from Doctor Who, such as Daleks and Cybermen. So I think this is just the behind the scenes of all the people that went inside the costumes over the years.
Yeah, I'm sold on this now. I know McCoy's presenting it, because that should be quite fun. I must admit, when I saw this initially, I was a bit like, I might pass on that one, but I don't know. Actually, having sort of read the little synopsis about it, it could be quite good fun. And again, it's only a tenner if you get it from Galaxy 4 or Zoom. Don't get it from Amazon. It's $14.99 on there.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you can get it for a tenner, which it seems to be on a few sites, it's a 2-disc set as well, I think, is it? Yeah.
It is. Yep.
So yeah, it can't go. I'll pay a tenner for that.
Yeah, I'm going to get
be
this.
all right.
Yeah, I think it's great value. Just $9.99 for 2 discs, and it makes it a little bit more sort of legit because McCoy's presenting the main.
I like the sound of that. Yeah.
So
that sold it to me, to be honest with you.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I'm not saying that the other independent releases from Koch Media or Real Time aren't any good. It's just it does make it feel a bit more legit.
Yeah,
if
definitely.
McCoy's on board. So there we go. And that's the only bit of merch as well. So right, Souffle Man. What are we doing this week?
Oh, Gary, this week you're going to see more Daleks, more variations of Daleks than you've ever seen on the screen in your life. It can only be Asylum of the Daleks.
Where are we? Spaceship, right?
Not just any spaceship. The Parliament of the Daleks.
The Asylum must be cleansed. The Predator of the Daleks will be deployed.
I'm not a predator, just a man with a plan.
Doctor!
Who killed all the Daleks? Who do you think?
Who do you think? Doctor Who.
So, after your very passive-aggressive introduction, Asylum of the Daleks came to our screens on the 1st of September 2012. It was the opener to Series 7. And it was written by The Mothball. It was directed by Nick Curran and stars Matt Smith as the Doctor with Karen Gill and Arthur Darvill. And the story is roughly the Doctor gets a distress signal, or no, a sort of message is sent to him somehow from a lady-ish called Darla von Carlson, who happens to be on Skaro, by the way. And her daughter is trapped in a Dalek prison, and she requests the Doctor's help in freeing her daughter from said prison. The Doctor realises very quickly this is a trap. Him, Amy and Rory get kidnapped and thrown into the Dalek homeworld of Skaro, and they're put before the Dalek Parliament, which I can assure you is very different to human Parliament. And the reason why it was a bit of a ruse in order to get the Doctor there is because the Daleks, unbeknownst to the Doctor, have this planet which they've called Asylum, where all of the crazy, eye-twitching mentalists go. And the Daleks have detected there's a problem somewhere because a spaceship has managed to crash land and break in. So they're very fearful that those Daleks will now be able to break out. So they're going to send the Doctor down to fix the situation because he's known as the dude that the Daleks are scared of, aka the oncoming storm. And there we go. He does bump into Clara.
Well, Oswin.
A bit of a spoiler there, but
yeah,
it's basically Clara playing another character in Doctor Who.
Yes.
If you can believe that. Yeah. Oswin, Oswald. Clara. Because when she comes back as Clara, she's playing exactly the same character.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Asylum. Hit me. I can already tell this is not going to be pretty, but do please kick off.
No,
what do you reckon?
It's not. I didn't. Yeah, I'm not feeling this one. I didn't know how I'd feel about it because I sort of remember liking it ish on a first when it aired. Because obviously the reveal of Oswin was kept secret amazingly back in the days when the BBC kept secrets and we had surprises. So I remember that was a bit of a probably up the episode for me at the time,
right?
Because you're like, oh, what? This is the new companion. How how's she inside a Dalek? This is, this is interesting. How's this all going to work out? How's the Doctor going to save her? And how's she going to come into the series? So that was quite a nice thing when it first aired. Of course, like a lot of the Moffat's scripts, once you've seen it once, that and that magic is gone, and you just take the story as it is. It's a really silly story, and if ever there's an example of style over substance in Doctor Who, I think this is it, because the episode looks, on the whole, really amazing. Like the direction's lovely, the actual effects, the CGI, the opening shot of the Dalek on Skaro is beautiful, although ridiculous. It's beautiful, and all the stuff on the snow planet. I'm sure you picked up a little Hoff reference as well, still Star Wars. But in terms of the way the episode looks, it looks fantastic. It looks like it's had some money spent on it. But I'm afraid take away the initial surprise of the Oswin reveal, and take away Matt Smith giving a fantastic performance. There isn't a lot left in this story for me to enjoy anyway. I got to the end of it and just felt like, what was that about? Just so silly. The Daleks calling the Doctor to sort out some mad Daleks, and it contradicts itself all the way through. I mean, it's like Doctor saying something. He says something about they're worried about the Daleks hating, and then he says to Amy in the middle of it something about hate is not a Dalek emotion. I don't know, it just contradicts itself all the way through. I just found myself getting quite annoyed with it. And obviously, you've got to remember when this first went out, it was built up as featuring all these classic Daleks and going to have every Dalek you could ever imagine on screen. And we don't see any of them for more than half a second. Mm-hmm. We get a brief glimpse of the special weapons Dalek, and apparently there's some other ones in there. I was looking really hard yesterday to see if I could spot them, because obviously I haven't watched this for a while, so I made a special effort, put my glasses on and everything, and I could hardly see any classic Daleks in there. So I saw lots of gold ones, which I've seen numerous times, but I even saw a reversed shot at the beginning. I was looking so careful. I was like, hang on, the plungers are on the wrong side for that one shot. That's how careful I was looking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm afraid not impressed with this one at all. Looks great, but the story's silly, and it just wraps up and the Doctor flies off, and you're left thinking, well, what a waste of 45 minutes.
Right.
50 minutes. What did you think, mate? Do you love it?
I do not love it.
Oh, dear.
I do not. I don't mind it. I think it's an okay watch. However, I feel the story is completely and utterly just ridiculous and wasted.
Yeah.
The reason being is thus. Two reasons. Like you, it should have been a really cool collection of Daleks. So this is the Moff. And I know we said earlier, he's a nice guy and everything, but he has made some questionable decisions around story plots, because, like we said around the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who, and that being a celebration of Doctor Who, we hardly, we got Tom and that was it.
Yeah.
And it's the same with this. This was touted as like, all the classic Daleks were going to be in there and so on. And you got, like you said, you have to do a bit of a Where's Wally thing. You have to pause it when you see 50,000 gold Daleks, and you have to, is that, did I see an old grey and blue one there? Did I see one?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe, I don't know, but there's certainly a couple of the dreadful big, bendy plastic red and white ones knocking around. And so that's the other thing. And it's just the Moff really doesn't get his own head sometimes, because his rationale for this story was that he wanted to give the Daleks a bit of a rest. And the reason for that is because they've become, and this is quoting them off, they have become the most reliably defeatable enemies in the universe. And that because they'd become a bit of a British icon, they're deemed a little bit cuddly now and have, drifted away from being threatening and scary. So he wanted to create a story that sort of, put the fear back into the universe from the Daleks and so on. But none of that comes forward at all.
No.
So we don't get any of the really cool, older style Daleks knocking around. It's just all the new ones, with the exception of one cameo from Special Weapons, and maybe if you got the magnifying glass out, you can pick out another couple, but that's it. And then the other thing is that if you're gonna build it up beforehand that you're going to make the Daleks scary again, then make them scary. All it is they become, in this story, they've become the stormtroopers of Doctor Who, because you have the Dalek Parliament. So you have the Dalek who's outside of his case. He's sort of calling the shots. So he's like the Emperor or Darth Vader, if you like. He's the guy that's calling the shots, and then all of the other Daleks are the ones that are just, clumsily walking around, firing shots here, there, and everywhere, and not hitting a thing. And our, would-be capturers just get out of it all very, very easily. Albeit with a little bit of help from Oswin. But yeah,
you can open doors 1 minute, and the next minute she can't, and then she can. And
yeah. So. When you think about it like that, the whole thing just flops, and it just doesn't hold any weight whatsoever. None at all.
I couldn't get my head around like the whole beginning as well, like the Doctor being summoned by the Daleks and them just talking like two old mates down the pub. All right, Dalek, how you doing? All right, I'll have a pint. Yeah, so we've got this problem. And when did they become mates?
Yeah.
Why would they call the Doctor to do this stupid thing, which he doesn't end up doing anyway?
It's ridiculous.
That whole premise of the story just really frustrated me. I just couldn't get my head around it at all.
Yeah. If you think about Chris Eccleston's reaction when he sees the Dalek in that story, Dalek, he's absolutely. You can see the dread and fear in his face, and he's absolutely petrified because he starts screaming up at the camera and banging the door. Doesn't he? He's like, "Get me out of here!"
Yeah,
he's really, but Matt Smith's reaction is like you said, he's just bumped into him on a walk down to the shop, and it just doesn't, that's what I'm trying to say. The whole story just doesn't add up properly.
It doesn't
and
hold water.
It doesn't at all. And I mean, it's weird because on the other side of the coin, it's not a bad watch. Like you said, it's produced beautifully and it looks great and the performances are very good. So you can kind of, turn your brain off a little bit and just enjoy the watch, just go with it. And the twist at the end with Oswin, finding out that she's in fact a Dalek, you could have seen that coming from last week. It all starts when the Doctor says to her, "Where'd you get the milk?"
Yeah.
For the souffles. As soon as he says that, the game's up.
And he says it right at the start, pretty much, doesn't he? When he's talking to the Daleks, is the first time he chats to her. Over the intercom, he says, "Where'd you get the milk?" So like you said, the game's already given away.
The game's up,
and she's talking through a big round window, and you're thinking, "Well, that's the Dalek eye, then." Yeah, I know.
It's a bit of a sigh moment, isn't it? Because you kind of want to like it because we are talking about Doctor Who's most classic, well-known monster here. These are, they're as famous as the Doctor himself. So you really want to get into the story. It's a Dalek story. There's millions of them. You really want to like it. But yeah, and like you said, Matt Smith's really good in it. His performance is great.
He's really trying hard. He's really, and actually he is very good in it. And so is Arthur Darvill, actually. If there's two things I enjoy about this episode, it's them. I think Matt Smith's amazing in it. I think really good performance. And Arthur Darvill's very good with the humour. I really warm towards Rory as a character because of him. So those two guys hold this together for me, really. Carry it.
Yes.
Carry it. The other thing I don't like, mate, is the silly Dalek human people. These Dalek eyes start growing out their heads. Where'd that come from?
Right, so that was a story that was an element that I think was introduced by Russell T Davies back in Eccleston's era with the nanogenes.
Is it?
So the Doctor dances and
it's one of my favourite two parts, actually.
Yeah, so the concept, the pod that Captain Jack crashed down to Earth, who thought was empty but was full of nanogenes that sort of, on a chemical, biological atomic level, whatever you want to call it, you know, can rebuild and stuff. I think it's that same concept. But what they do is, if another life form lands on this planet, in this case, it's a human being, the nanogenes see that as a fault, if you like, and so they get rebuilt into sort of Dalek DNA.
Okay.
So it kind of switches them to, you know, to a sort of Dalek thing. And I think, if memory serves, the Doctor does say to Oswin that because she's such a genius, she's so clever, that they did a full conversion on her. So she wasn't just a human with an eye stalk that can pop out of her head. She was turned fully into a Dalek by the nanogenes. That's the idea. Yeah, so these nanogenes, they at a cellular level, there you go, I think that's the word I'm looking for.
Do you like the idea, though? Do you like, because I just think it looks silly. I just doesn't do anything for me, as it don't think they're scary or anything, really. I don't know, I think they just look stupid with these Dalek eyes popping out their head. But what do you think? Do you like them?
Yeah, they're okay. They're okay. It's quite an interesting concept. I really like what Russell did with introducing that concept of these nanogenes, and thankfully they haven't been used a lot
to death.
They haven't been used over the top. So yeah, I mean, it's quite cool. I mean, but like you, I agree they're not scary, but it's quite a good idea. It's quite cool. It just wasn't used to a full effect. I don't think they wasn't like the Daleks themselves. These humans that are actually sort of half Dalek, they're just not sort of scary enough. There's a scene when they go into the crashed spaceship and the guy starts to get his memory back, and that sort of triggers off the transformation with the eye stalk, and he goes a bit mad and starts going after them.
Yeah.
And then when he sort of dealt with the dead astronauts, I guess, you know, sort of juicy skeleton ones, they start to come alive as well. So, you know, it's the idea is there. It just wasn't, like everything in this story, it just wasn't scary enough.
Just wasn't executed well enough.
Yeah, this could have been a really good sort of scary story, this one. It could have been one that, you know, the Litlands would have been a bit fearful of watching or going back to. But I think they shied away too much. I think they made it too, well, in a grand twist of ironic fate, they made it too cuddly.
Yeah.
I would say.
Well, while you're explaining things, what is it the Daleks want the Doctor to do as well? Like, why do they send him down to the what is he supposed to do down there? Because what he seems to do is land and get in a bit of trouble and try and free Oswin and then leaves again. But what is it they want him to do? Because that's the other thing I didn't really understand. Right.
So this planet where these crazy Daleks are on, it's protected by a planet-wide sort of force field.
Yeah.
So that stops these crazy Daleks from escaping. So when Oswin's ship crashed, it basically it sort of broke the force field. It sort of ruptured the planet-wide force field. So the Dalek Parliament know that if these insane Daleks were to wake up and get wise to the fact that the force field's broken, they can escape.
So they want the Doctor to mend the force field?
Yeah, so they want the... well, they're not mend it. They want the Doctor and stuff to deactivate the force field so that the Dalek ships above the planet can just destroy them.
Oh, okay. See, it shows how much attention I was paying to it. And I was watching it properly. I didn't look at my phone that much, surprisingly. But I just couldn't... Again, this just goes to show I just couldn't get my head around why can't the Daleks do that themselves. I know they say something about being scared of these Daleks that have gone too mad and all that, but I just don't buy that at all. You know,
well,
why would they get the Doctor of all people to go down there to do that for them?
Yeah, I think, in a way, I think what they're trying to say is they're trying to sort of elevate the Doctor's history with the Daleks. You know, they're trying to elevate that to the point where, because even the Doctor says in one scene, doesn't he? He's like, not one of you will go down there. You know, he does say that to them.
Yeah.
So I think what it's doing is, to the viewer, it's saying that these Daleks who have gone crazy, you know, they're really, you know, potentially fatal. You know, if you're going to go down there and start messing with them, you know, they'll start killing anything. Daleks are like, you know, whatever. So the actual Daleks themselves are a bit fearful. They're not going to go down there because they're going to get their ass kicked. So the only other person that they know of that's capable of dealing with Daleks is the Doctor.
Right.
So it kind of, elevates his status as like the person that, the only person that can deal with Daleks other than Daleks who are too scared is the Doctor.
All right, I'll go with that then. I'll go with that. But what about all this stuff about the Daleks having their mind erased then, so they don't know who he is at the end, and they're all shouting "Doctor Who"?
Wow, this is a bit of a continuity thing, isn't it? Because as a way of, because the Doctor gets trapped, doesn't he, on his way to go to see Oswin? He gets trapped in that room, and I think that's the scene anyway. And the only way that Oswin can save him, because she can't get the door open conveniently at that point, the only way to save him is to erase all of the Daleks' memory of the Doctor, so that, they suddenly think, oh, he's this random person. He might be a threat just because he's some random human, but he's definitely not threatening as the Doctor. So it's a bit of a continuity thing because at the end,
I can hear the Moff saying, "Go with it, go with it."
Yeah. So from that point on, are we saying that the Daleks in general don't know who the Doctor is because their memories have been wiped? But that's not true, because we have further episodes after this where the Doctor encounters the Daleks, and so that's definitely one of those Moff times where it's just go with it. In the background, behind the scenes, in the timeline somewhere, somebody's gone up to the Dalek Parliament, flicked a switch, and now they can remember the Doctor again. And, here we are. So, it's a bit of you have to just go with it.
Oh, all right. Okay, I will go. Yeah. I will go with it for the sake of the review. But yeah, it did strike me as odd. And also really hammering home the Doctor Who, like, yay, they said the TV title, yay. Doctor Who, they said it, hooray. I'm trying to think of positives because I've been very negative so far. I mean, I
want to say one more negative before we move on.
Go on then.
Which is worrying to me, because if you were a viewer who decided that I'm going to watch some Doctor Who, all my friends watch it, and I want to watch it, and I've found, or I've nicked off my friend, the Series 7 box set, I'm going to give it a watch. I've never seen Doctor Who before. It's really worrying that someone like you, who has been a lifelong Doctor Who fan, who knows, all the Dalek stories inside out and knows the show inside out, didn't know what the hell was going on.
Yeah, I mean, it may have been because I wasn't paying attention, because I did lose interest in this story very quickly, I will admit. I mean, I watched it. I only watched it last night as well. And I made notes, and bizarrely, normally I make at least 2 pages of notes for each episode before the show. That's just natural. That's what I end up making. I've made barely a page of notes on this story.
You're not alone though, because the first time I watched it, I thought, crikey, what was that? I think it's one of those stories where I think I understand it. And then when I thought about it some more, I'm like, no, I don't. So it's only after watching it a second, this is the third time I would have watched it, and reading up the synopsis in detail on Wiki and stuff, that I finally got my head around it. Yeah,
and I think it's because the things that I don't understand are things that don't make sense in terms of the writing, if you know what I mean, and the show itself. But
maybe it's us. Maybe the majority of our listeners will be like, "What are you guys going on about? It's really easy. It's just A, B, and C." But I don't know. So let's move on to some positives, though. You said you had a few.
Not many, but no. I mean, actually, I suppose I can't move on to a positive actually without mentioning a negative, because they were kind of linked. So we've got this divorce thing going on between the Ponds, which has come out of nowhere, right? So okay, we'll go with that. But so I don't really like that, but it does lead on to I do kind of like the scene at the end where Rory goes to give her his bracelet, and it proves that he does love her, and we have that exchange about, because one of the things that the Ponds relationship always sort of interests me in a way, because I don't like this thing that Amy is always fawning after the Doctor in series 5, and then because I always feel sorry for Rory because I like the character so much. So I don't know, in this we do kind of almost tackle that issue with their relationship, that he loves her more and he knows it, but he's accepted it, because that's a bit of a running theme. So I like the fact that that's brought to the fore and we get to explore it a little bit. And I do like the fact that she's having none of it. She just won't accept it. So although I don't like the fact that they've got this divorce story going on, I do like that little scene at the end, because I kind of think it's needed, because all the way through sort of series 5 and 6, I'm sort of thinking, poor old Rory, you don't get treated very good. She's always like, giving the doctor the eyes, and he's always second best and stuff. So I do like that. And I do like the scene where he goes to give her the bracelet, and she realizes the doctor's put his bracelet on her, and we get a little cut back to him adjusting the tie, and because she says he can't fix things like he fixes his tie. So I like all that. I think that's a nice piece of writing, and it's, a little bit emotional. And again, I think Raw is excellent in those scenes, and so is Karen, actually. So I do like that side of it.
Right.
Even though I don't particularly like the sort of divorce sort of subplot, if you like. So that's one positive, I suppose. And as I said, I thought Matt Smith was really going for it. There is a scene where he's really like acting scared when Oswin can't get the door open, and those Daleks have recognized him or whatever, and he's screaming to get to go in. And then when he realizes she's a Dalek, even though it's no surprise to the viewer, I think he does a really nice performance of looking gutted. He looks really sort of like defeated and like, oh my, no. So I think Matt Smith's awesome in this, actually. Really, really good. So that, there's a couple of small positives. And like you said, it is not unwatchable. Like, just because I didn't enjoy the story, it does visually look brilliant. And I would say it's a reasonable watch. Like, I wouldn't say the story before this was Doctor the Widow, the Wardrobe. I'd happily never, ever watch that again. I will never put that episode on unless we're reviewing it or there's a reason to. This, it may not be the best, but if it was on, I wouldn't switch it off. Right, so like you said, it's watchable enough.
Yes, it is.
What positives you got?
Yeah, so I did like the Amy and Rory thing, mainly because it was fleshed out a little bit. If you remember back at the time, they did a sort of serial of mini episodes called Pond Life that went out. And that kind of fleshed out their relationship at the time. You could see that, they're going through a bit of a rough patch, and it sort of leaded up to this episode with them getting divorced. So you had that going on. So I like that they explored that a little bit outside of the actual series, because that does give you but then again, if you're a casual viewer, you wouldn't know any of that build up to it, I suppose. So you have to sort of go with it again. But I really did like Arthur Darvill in this. Really liked good. His performance. There was two scenes which I really liked. The first one was where he goes to see Amy at the beginning. She's doing her modelling photo shoot, and he's clearly cut up at the minute because he's got the divorce papers, and he's like, you need to sign these, and she's being very kind of flippant and not showing any emotion towards it. She wants to be viewed as, it's not really bothering her and so on. But he plays it really well because he just gets her to sign it, and then, he's like, oh, you're just pouting in front of the camera, I suppose. And he walks out, and you can see him when he gets on the bus, he just looks, I don't know, he just looks really gutted. It's really hitting him. So, and then the other scene is where you mentioned where, he's kind of really yelling at her, to take the bracelet, because they've always played on this subject with Amy and Rory, where Rory always feels like he's punching above his average. They always play on that, and he actually, we actually get the words out of his mouth. He says, "I've always loved you more than you've loved me," and that's the tipping point. And we only get to that. She only realizes how much she loves him after he's gone through that and he's vocally said it. Because the only other times we see it is in each episode. He sort of hints a little bit of that, and you can tell that Amy sort of knows it, really, in the back of her mind. She knows that, he's infatuated with her. She knows that. But he actually gets the courage and he yells at her, and, he properly goes for it. So I love those couple of scenes. It really shows Arthur Darvill, he's great acting skills. And not only does he work really well with Matt Smith all the time, those two really,
yes, they do,
bounce off each other.
Yeah.
It's good to see him on his own sort of thing, sort of holding his own, in this story. So really enjoyed that. I really loved Matt Smith's performance. What another time where he's just worth his weight in gold in stories like this, where probably in the production, the build-up, it was touted as, not only to us as viewers, but to everybody making the show, that it was going to be this really big, Dalek story with all these different Daleks, and it's going to be this and that. And probably when it came to it, again, it's down to our lead man to sort of really push the story forward and make it enjoyable. Because in every scene, he's really good. He's either confused, as we are, or he's really confident and quite funny, and he's typical great Matt Smith stuff. Yeah,
and I found he's a slightly darker side of his Doctor in this story, which I like, which we see more of in Series 7. He's got all the humour stuff going on at the start, where he's quite enjoying chatting to the Daleks and being, in that sort of different position of not being exterminated. So that's good. So you got the humour, but I also like the darker side where he's really being serious and getting down to business. So, showing that slightly darker edge to the 11th Doctor that Matt Smith had in him. I think his performance is faultless. As I said, I feel he carries the episode a lot of the time.
Yeah. There was one scene which was really good, actually, near the end, where he walks through the door and sees Oswin as a Dalek. He's conflicted because he can see in his face, he's like, I'm so sorry. He's apologising, because she doesn't know. That was part of the twist, wasn't it? She doesn't know she's a Dalek. So, he was like, I'm so sorry. But then his face changes to this really kind of menacing, and he's quite venomous in his delivery. He's like, but you are a Dalek. And so he's conflicted in his mind. I think he formed almost an emotional bond with Oswin when he couldn't see her. But then when he sees her as a Dalek, he's like, oh, she saved me, I suppose. However, she is a Dalek after all. So his face really changes and he really sort of snaps at her. He's quite venomous. And like you said, just that little dark side of him that's really good.
I'm trying to think, there was another scene and it escapes my memory at the minute where he was playing it really sort of, not angry, but it's that sort of darker side. I remember thinking, we get to see a bit of this in Series 7 and I like it. I wish I could remember what it was now, but it's just something where he probably goes from being very sort of comedic to being very serious and quite, like you said, not venomous, but he's sort of laying down the cards. You think, I like this side of the 11th Doctor. We don't see it very often.
There was a scene where he's addressing the Parliament, when he first gets transported there, and he does play it quite funny for a bit, but then he does turn very quickly. But that's just Matt Smith. He's very, very good at doing that.
And I thought that's the thing. Is like the first 5 minutes are really quite fun. Actually, I remember thinking, maybe this is better than I thought, better than I remember. Because when he comes in and Rora's like, "How bad is it?" On a scale of 10, and he's like 11 and all this. I think he's great at that sort of stuff.
What do you think to Murray Gold then? There was a couple of cool little themes in this one. It relies heavily on the usual Matt Smith era stuff. But there's some nice little moments though, music wise.
It's some good creepy bits of music when, like you said, when the Daleks are coming alive, when Rory's trapped with them. That was quite a nice scene. And again, a good example of how it could have been more scary, because that starts off being quite creepy when he's like turning the head round and they're all dead. But then one of them, he drops the Dalek ball, doesn't he? He's like, what do you want? Eggs? Is this an egg? That's quite fun, that scene. And then the Dalek comes alive. So that Murray is sort of quite good in those scenes, I think, of doing that creepy, menacing build up that something's going to happen.
It was also I also thought that we should have had more scenes like that.
We should have. I agree.
Where Rory, you could tell that although Rory's being Rory, he's being quite sort of scaredy cat funny, if that's the best way to describe it. He's you can tell that the tension's ramping up because he's trapped with all those, and they're crazy Daleks at that. And, it does build up and it's very suspenseful. But that was the only time that I ever felt like any one of them could have been in potential danger. Because even the bits where the Doctor's running away and...
Oswin's going to save him,
Yeah, and even when Amy realises that her sort of wristband that protects her from the nanogenes converting her to Dalek, even when, she starts to turn almost, she starts losing her memory and so on. Even then I thought, well, she's going to be okay. She's... I can't see her turning into a Dalek here and the Doctor's having to turn her back or anything. So that was the only scene where I thought, Rory could be in trouble here. because it's Rory, dispensable
exactly,
Rory.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a bit of a tricky one to review because, the story was a bit of a letdown. However, it's a decent watch because the performances are very good and it looks great, and it
is mainly the style of it. It does look fantastic. A lot of it, all the thousands of Daleks and stuff. I want to know then, what did you think of Oswin?
Yeah, I was going to say,
well, she's Jenna Louise Coleman at this point. She hasn't dropped the Louise bit yet. So what did you think of her as Oswin? I mean, as I said at the time, it was quite a surprise they managed to put her in the first episode without anybody knowing. So that was a great thing when it first aired. But taking that shock value away, what do you sort of think of her in this?
I actually quite like her performance in this one.
I
actually quite like her because she's very sassy, I would say.
She is very sassy.
Do you know what I mean by that? She's
yeah, well, there's one bit where she's sort of just lying across the chair, very sassy, like
and her reactions and her scenes with the Doctor as well. She she immediately, I think she can tell that the Doctor is viewed as this kind of really, dangerous, potentially dangerous, person, but she doesn't treat him like that in any way. She just, there's a lot of banter with him, a lot of joking. She doesn't see his authority like everyone else does, I suppose. So based on that, she's very, she's quite funny, and so I think because this is the first time that we see her like this, it does work. It's a good contrast with the Doctor. The only other person who's like that with him, I suppose, is Amy. She's because at the very beginning, when the floor opens and the force, the thing that transports them down to the planet, the Doctor's like, "Don't be scared," and Amy says something like, "Scared? Are you kidding?" Because
I'm loving this.
Because they haven't travelled with him for a little while. And she, Oswin's a bit like that. She's not really, buying it. She just treats him as the mate sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I suppose it's the first time we get to see how the 11th Doctor and his new companion to be are going to interact, because she is quite she's quite confident, cocky. There's lots of sort of little one-liners coming out left, right and centre for us. So it's quite an interesting introduction to our sort of new companion, if you like. I think she's okay in it. Yeah, I think she is perhaps just a tad too much. But then again, it works in terms of the story because they do tone down the sort of chipping in with sarky comments every 5 seconds. But it works in terms of the story,
Yeah, so I think, based as an isolated story, I think she works very well.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, it's not until, we get to see too much of Clara as each series goes by, and her importance and sort of gets ramped up a lot of the times past the Doctor's.
Yeah.
It does begin to grate, as we've said many times, but I think just for this one, and we don't see her again until, what is it, the Snowmen, isn't it? The next time we see her.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so we don't see her for a little while, so you can kind of appreciate the banter and the cockiness, and then you can forget about it for a while. So it's okay. And I think she's as an actress, she's very good. I do like Jenna Coleman. It's just a shame that she was overwritten. That's all.
I think I do remember thinking it's going to be like, I did love at the time thinking, I was so intrigued like how she ended up in the Dalek and how she was going to become the companion and all of that sort of thing. I mean, that was a really nice trick for them to pull off. Unfortunately, the answers we got didn't quite live up to the expectations, which is, nothing new. But I did love that at the time. I remember just thinking, wow, that's really cool how he's done that. So are we going to go back in time? Is this going to be how she ends up? Where are we going with this? So that in itself was good. Yeah, she does give her a good performance. Yeah.
She does.
In terms of the story.
Yeah. And then the other supporting cast members, very few and far between.
They're not bad, actually, are they, though, for supporting cast, even though they're not in it much? I actually thought, sometimes we get some very stage-like performances from people who have only got, 3 or 4 lines. They're not bad in this. The woman that's on the Dalek, on Skaro with all the millions of Daleks, and she's like been converted, and the Doctor's trying to get her to remember. She's not bad. Do you know what I mean? And she's only in it a little bit, so
yeah.
And
Harvey was quite good as well. You know, the guy who helps them. He helps Amy, but then turns.
So
he was quite good.
Dalek.
Yeah.
No, I did think. That was one of the. Sorry, that was the other positive note I made. Actually, the supporting cast, although they only have a few lines, are decent. Yeah.
Yes. And Nick Briggs obviously having the time of his life, voice in Daleks. But we did have, is it Barnaby? Yeah, Barnaby Edwards and Nick Pegg come back to do some of the other variations, like the deeper voice Dalek and one of the other ones. And so that was quite cool.
I just keep thinking of the Doctor Who magazine at the time had a amazing cover with all the different Daleks on.
I know.
Before this,
I know.
I just every time I watch it, I can't get over it. But I must. But yeah, I just keep thinking. I've still got it somewhere as well. It's an amazing cover, wasn't it? Saying,
I remember
this episode was so built up to be. Yeah, something it wasn't. Anyway.
Yes. Okay. Are we satisfied with the details? Do you want to move on to scores?
Yeah, let's move on to scores.
Okay, it's me to go first, I believe.
It is.
And I'm going to give this a 6 out of 10.
Ooh. Okay. Unusually, because I'm normally higher than you, but I'm actually going lower. Going lower, higher, lower. I'm going for a 5.
A middle of the road.
Very middle of the road, I find this. So a 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you couldn't decide either way. It was down the middle.
Yeah. I was going to say it's not. It is very much down the middle. It's not bad. It's not good. It's just, as I said, if it was on, I'd watch it, but I wouldn't go out of my way to put it on. Yeah.
Yes. My initial thought was a 4.
Ooh.
But then I thought, actually, no, it's not that bad.
No, it's not bad.
There are worse stories.
Oh, yes.
A lot worse stories. And then I settled on a 5 like you. I was like, yeah. But then I thought, no, Matt Smith's brilliant in this. So I gave it another 1 just for Matt Smith's performance.
Oh, I think that's fair enough.
Yeah.
And as I said, most of that 5 is for the production values and stuff, not the story itself. Yeah.
Okay, so 6 from me, 5 from Adam. Let's see what our listeners think. We resumed our polls over on Twitter. So we asked you if this one was likey or stinky, and 64% of you said likey, with the remaining 36% on stinky.
Oh.
So majority there goes to likey. Over on Facebook, Sammy Satine says, question, where exactly in continuity does this fit? She says, because here the Doctor barely bats an eyelid at Skaro being back. 2 series later, he is shocked and surprised to see it.
That is a very good point.
Was this Skaro before it blew up in Remembrance? I'm confused.
As are we all, Sammy. As are we all. We
Yes.
should have asked them off on Sunday. But
She then says, when do the Daleks have a parliament or indeed an asylum? Random breakup between Amy and Rory for 5 seconds, only to get them back together again. She likes Oswin. She would have been more interesting companion than Clara. Shame the special weapons Dalek gets a brief cameo and does nothing. She settles on a 6 out of 10.
Yeah.
Good
Some very good
there.
points, Sammy.
Yep. Lewis Blackmore says, bit of an inconsistent mess, to be honest. Feels like a scenario where they almost had to create a full-blown story just to fulfill the Terry Nation estate contract.
Yeah.
The inclusion of Amy and Rory seems a bit forced, as well as their divorce storyline. Nevertheless, Smith is very good, as always, and it's always good to see classic Daleks. 6 out of 10. Dooley Johnson says, this is one that a lot of fans really enjoy, but personally for me, this was one of the weakest episodes of Smith's era. Why do the Daleks have an asylum? That is my main complaint with this episode. The whole premise, kind of like the episode following, Dinosaurs and a Spaceship, sounds stupid.
Yeah.
Oswin is all right. I'd much prefer her over current day Clara as a companion, but overall the episode is just bad. The downfall of the episode, besides its poor premise, is the stupid breakup between Amy and Rory. This man waited 2,000 years for this woman and broke off their marriage in less than 2 years.
Yeah.
3 out of 10.
Oh.
Paul Villano
Gosh.
says terrible because of the potential lost and proof of Moffat's madness. Oswin, brilliant idea, brilliant character, brilliant plot, all simply snipped and never used again after years. Instead, Moffat gave us a morass of confusing doctor, lesbian, mystery Claras we couldn't care less about, when all we wanted was Oswin made human again. Good point, Paul. Yes. Jason Thayer says the marital squabbling between Amy and Rory bring it down. I like the concept of Daleks having members who are too crazy with hate and anger even for them. Clara's echo is fascinating. I think this is one of Moffat's best scripts, 9 out of 10.
Wow.
Coolio. Chris Parry says this is one I've got to appreciate more over the years. I loved the idea of an asylum, the mix of Daleks of all eras on show, and Oswin and that twist at the end. 7 out of 10. Kevin Mullin says one of my favourite Dalek stories because it tries to do something different and introduces new elements into the mythos. Visually stunning, well directed and acted. The introduction of Jenna Coleman and her death was unexpected. Maybe it could be argued that we never saw enough of the classic Daleks, but that would be rectified a year later. Not perfect, but enjoyable, 8.5. Miles Mackenzie, average watch. Potential wasted and rushed. This could have been a good two-parter. The story has so many pointless plots, which were poorly executed. 4 out of 10. Our good friend Bad Wilf Martin Vincent says, I don't think this story works at all. Had this been Asylum of the Cybermen, I think it would have been a perfect story. That's interesting.
That is interesting, yeah.
Craig Stimson says, truly love this story. Such a cinematic film in its direction and the effects. Not always sure the script is bulletproof, but I'm happy to turn a blind eye. Love the gritty reality to Amy and Rory separating and the fact that the Doctor can even solve relationship difficulties. The hallucination ballet scene is quite compelling, as so is a series, one of my favourites from Matt Smith.
Thank you, Craig. I forgot about that scene. That is really trippy, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Clay Crow says, I personally liked this episode. Lots of fun, good energy, and a great introduction to the Impossible Girl scenario. 8 out of 10. Joe Sweeney, this is one of the weakest Dalek stories in the Matt Smith era. It did have potential, but what let it down was the story was just too messy and no continuity. And there was just nothing new thrown into it. I don't get the Parliament of the Daleks, which that has come from nowhere, and the Daleks in this was wasted and hardly do anything.
Yeah.
What kept me entertained was Matt Smith with his good performance. Even if he had a weak story to deal with, he gives it a 4.
A 4, okay.
Joseph Howarth, the story just blows. Oh dear.
Oh dearie me.
The Daleks are just used as a subplot where they do absolutely nothing. We spend the majority of the episode just focusing on Amy and Rory's apparent divorce, which makes no sense from a storytelling standpoint, and the overabundance of human Daleks. God bless Matt Smith trying as the Doctor. Lord knows he's trying, but I just wish he had something to do in the episode that spoke to his acting range. Regardless, he's one of the only good things about the episode. He does go on a bit further, but he gives it a 3 out of 10.
A 3, oh dear.
George Puddy says, so Asylum of the Daleks, I always feel that this episode gets too much hate than it deserves. Maybe this is because as the first series opener on broadcast, with me joining at the end of series 6, he says, sure, the Amy and Rory divorce is crap and completely unneeded, and the classic Daleks are wasted, yet I love the concept behind the Dalek Asylum. Smith is brilliant as always, and Jenna gives a good performance. I find Oswin's character annoying, though. Overall, flawed yet enjoyable, slightly nostalgic story for me. 7 out of 10.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Last couple, Lou Gallagher says, bit of a sloppy mess, really. Some really grating plot holes that stop me from enjoying it that are too obvious to ignore. How can they hear Oswin's human voice over the comms when it's later revealed she talks like any other Dalek?
Oh.
And where did her music also come from? Do Daleks have iTunes or Spotify in their path web?
I like the thought of that.
He says, ask Tat for me. Well, we would ask him, Lou, but he's sulking as usual.
Yeah.
And says, why do the Daleks say they find it offensive to extinguish such divine hatred and then blow up the Asylum planet with however many Daleks on it. Two big niggles, he says, for me. And the off-screen arc, if you can call it that, with Amy and Rory was really forced and resolved too quickly. So the cast is great, though. It was a nice surprise debut for Jenna. Nick Briggs should be commended for his vocal work, with how he manages to take many Daleks in the Asylum. He goes on to give it a 4 or a 5.
4 or 5, okay.
Yeah. And lastly, Lewis Palmer says, having just rewatched this in my marathon, I can say it's the definition of a mixed bag.
Yes.
Some elements are fantastic. The direction is spot on. Smith is acting his heart out as always. And the Daleks are pretty well utilised, though barely any classics, even though we were told they'd be heavily featured. Murray's music is also great, and Nick Briggs really gets to shine as the Daleks. Unfortunately, there's a lot wrong with it. The Amy Rory subplot, the Dalek continuity, Scaro's back, but it was destroyed, blah, blah, blah. He doesn't give it a score. Oh, he does give it a score. He says 5.5 out of 10. And we also get new Instagram filter titles.
Oh, yeah. So I was going to ask you about the titles, because when do we get... I was thinking this would have the red smoky titles with Matt Smith's face in for some reason, but it doesn't. Is that the second half of this series or what? I've completely lost track now.
I don't know.
With the thumping bass, it must be the second half of this series, mustn't it?
I think so.
I thought it would be. I thought it'd be at the start of this series. Yeah, most odd.
Hold on, what's series 7? Was that the one with the big break?
That's what I'm thinking. So maybe it's the second half of this series. Yeah, because I was waiting for it, thinking, is the thumpy bass?
Yeah,
boom, boom, and we don't get it. We get this weird. Yeah,
I think it's series 7B.
B. So we only got it for half a series.
I believe so.
Surprised they would splash cash on that.
Yeah, so that was it for the official stuff. Did you have anything over on the Geeks handbag?
Yeah, I had a couple on Geeks handbag, so a bit like yours, quite mixed really. Gavrick Sawyer says, crappy as hell. The Oswald thing was just pointless and annoying. The classic Daleks didn't actually get the opportunity to properly shine, and still haven't, he says. The whole relationship between Amy and Rory was incredibly forced. Still another person saying that. Gavrick, which is a great name, by the way, gives it 2 out of 10. A 2. Bradley Willard, I don't usually detest many stories, he says, but this has to be one of the crowning jewels as far as Doctor Who's worst episodes are concerned. There is a futile and inconsistent narrative, pointless subplots, i.e. Amy and Rory's divorce, and a completely wasted potential by introducing every single Dalek in the show's history. A massive disappointment. He gives it 0 out of 10.
Ooh.
1 point for Matt Smith. Surely, Bradley. Surely. Anyway, Patrick Wolseley says, for me, it's an okay story, but he prefers Stolen Earth and Journey's End. He gives it a 6.5 out of 10. Charlie Turner, good episode, horribly, terribly flawed. There are only 2 things I hate the most, is Rory's divorce subplot, which takes the focus away from the Daleks, and the fact the Daleks are made to forget who the Doctor is. Basically, he says he quite enjoys it, though, overall, so he's given it an 8.5 out of 10. Patrick Sherwood, just basically says it's an okay story. He gives it a 7.5 out of 10, but it's not the best, he says. Miles McKenzie, I watched it once more after writing a review on the podcast page. I think I've changed my score to a 1.5 out of 10. He says, there's something about this story I can't stand, but I'm not sure what. Yeah, I think it's just, I can kind of get your feeling there. And lastly, John Hurt gives a very short review, basically says this should be called Asylum of the Fan Service.
Oh, crikey.
Yeah, so harsh words there.
Harsh words there, my friend.
But a lot of them I agree with.
A real mixed bag, I think, is the moral of this story.
Yeah.
Some people obviously very, very, very much like it, which is fair enough, but a lot of people not liking it at all.
I wanted to like it more, I really hoped I'd watch it yesterday and think, this isn't too bad. I knew there'd be bits I wouldn't like, but I didn't expect it to end and me feel like, that was rubbish. I thought there might be, more to it.
Snap.
Anyway.
Yeah, I really wanted to like it, but there we go. Thank you so much for all of your thoughts and mini reviews on that. It's very nice. Next week, it's Classic Who's turn.
Yeah, I love it when we do Classic Who.
Yes. So what we got next week, Birdie?
So next week. Oh, no, is that? No, that's
That's Sea
Is it them?
Devils.
Yes, it is. No, that's Sea Devils.
Yeah.
Oh, no. It's not Sea Devils, listeners. It's Ice Warriors. We're doing the Seeds of Death. The Seeds of Death. No, it's still on. Seeds of Death.
Seeds of Death, yes.
What do they talk like? Ice Warriors. It's a bit like that.
There's a bit of a whispery kind of. Yeah. You're not far off.
Yeah. Do still. Save me. Do still.
So, Patrick Troughton story next week. What's the TARDIS crew in this one? I know it's Jamie and Zoe. Jamie and Zoe. Jamie. Oh no!
There is. I always get Seeds of Death and Seeds of Doom.
Yes,
mixed up the fourth as well. And there's a friend of ours who listens to the podcast. I'm not going to say his name because he told me I always never say his name. I'm not going to. If he's made it this far to the end, he always says, "When are you going to do Seeds of Doom?" And I said, "Oh, it might be." Oh no, it's not. It's still not come up.
It's a common problem.
Yeah, Seeds of Death.
Yes. So get your DVD. Get your VD divs. Get your DVDs out for that
get your
one.
8 tracks out. Get your,
yes. It's a 6-parter, so you're going to have to invest a little bit of time.
Oh, blimey.
Yeah. Not bad though. Back in the day, I'll tell you what, it bagged over 7 million, roughly 7 million viewers an episode, mate.
Did it?
Oh yeah.
That's because it's Troughton.
Oh, Pat. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, Seeds of Death, not the Seeds of Doom, the Seeds of Death.
Death.
Next week, and I think we'll do there for 174.
Okay.
Thank you so much for sticking with us and listening through episode 174. It's been great to have you on board as we waffle and chat and keep you updated of most of the things that are going on in Doctor Who. Unfortunately, and this is the 3rd week in a row now, somebody has left us from Classic Who. But there is a cool DVD on the way. Potentially cool. Yes. Asylum of the Daleks.
Yeah.
Dear, oh dear, what are we going to do?
Oh dear, Moff.
Maybe it's one of those stories where we watch it in 10 years' time and we're like, do you know what? I haven't seen it since we reviewed it back in 2018, but I really like it now.
What do you think?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, crikey. Next week, the Seeds of Death. We'll just look out for the social media posts for that, asking you for your reviews and so on. That would be awesome sauce. In the meantime, head over to the website, www.bigblueboxpodcast.co.uk. You can listen to all of our previous shows on there, plus you can link off to all of our social networks that we're on, so you can give us a like and a follow if you would like to do so. You can also link off there if you want to listen to it on a podcast network or app. There's a big button on there for iTunes, plus some of the other podcast networks. We're on all of those things. And if you're an iTunes listener, if you could spare a moment for a review and a rating, that would be amazing, because that really helps us a lot. Also, check out my co-host's YouTube channel, The Geeks.
I actually enjoy enjoying doing that voice more than I should.
Check out The Geeks Handbag over on YouTube, where Adam has a plethora of unique science fiction based videos where he goes through numerous unboxings and reviews and all sorts. It's very good.
Yeah.
Go and check it out. Check it out. Until next week for episode 175. My name is Gary.
My name's Adam.
And remember, bad oh God.